Hello and welcome along to this video where I'm going to talk to you about the 13 horror films that I watched in the month of October. I picked them from this book here, The Mammoth Book of Slasher Movies. I just went through them and just at random pointed to a page, and whatever them 13 films were from here, I watched them. Now I'm going to tell you what I thought of them, and also I'm going to rank them in what I thought from 13 to 1. I know Davey likes my rankings as if it's sort of like some throwback to the 70s and when Top of the Pops ruled the world. So you know, a big shout out goes to Davey there. I know he likes that scenario, so hopefully I get a blast out of this video. So I went through and I got 13 films. I watched them all, and this is how I've ranked them. So this is kind of part 2 of what I've watched in the month of October. These are they're all horror films, but there's some in there that I probably wouldn't have picked. If I went to my shelves and thought I'll pick 13 films, I probably wouldn't have picked these 13 films, but I'm really glad I did. I had some good time with some of these films. Now let's go through this. And at 13, the one at the bottom of the list, but it's by no means a bad film. In fact, I really enjoyed it. It's quite an unseen gem. I never heard of it when it came out, and when I watched it, I thought, am I going to watch something that's just, one of these films they say it's unheard of for a long time, and you watch it and you think, well, that was just rubbish. But it wasn't. It was Frightmare. Now this is from 1983, and it's spine number 38. Now this film here is a sort of, I'm going to say it's got a comedy element to it, and it's about a fella who's gets people together for his funeral and says, I've died. And this is the thing, I'm going to come back from the grave and I'm going to haunt you all, something like that. And it's quite good for that in that respect, but it's not as great as these other films. But I did enjoy it, and it's got a lovely print on it as well, because it's got a brand new 2K scan. So it's get it cheap. It's quite a good film, although it's not the best one by far in this one. And when I watched it early on this year anyway, so when I watched it again, it wasn't as much of a revelation as some of these were. So number 13, Frightmare, yes. Number 12 is an horror film, and it's called Madman. Now this film's from 1981, I believe, and it is a 4K restoration of the original negatives, and it looks really nice. And to be honest, when I put it on, I couldn't remember. I've watched it obviously, but I couldn't remember that much about it, and I did find that I had a really good time with it. I do think it's obviously a blatant Friday the 13th type rip-off of that genre, because of 1981. These films were all like that, but it's a good entry into that that genre of films, and I do recommend it. I recommend all these films, but number 12 is Madman. Some good kills in here as well. But like I say, the picture quality is really good. Well, the 4K scan, and it's surprisingly enough, a 4K scan for Madman is a little bit of a strange one to think that Arrow would have done that. Now, number 11, yes, I'm going to have to count these backwards, which is my strong point. Coming in at number 11 is Visiting Hours. Now, this is from, I'm going to blank on all these dates. I had them all in my head, and I'm going to completely forget them all. Anyway, so it's an early 80s horror film. Now, it does star, I'm not going to give anything away. It stars, I'm going to say, is it Michael Ironside? I think that's his name. William Shatner's in here as well, which is always a good addition. And I think it's Michael Ironside. I can't see the rating is far too small. I'm not going to give anything away by saying that Michael Ironside is the killer from the get-go, but it's really clever how he's a killer, but you see him infiltrating the hospital and doing all these sort of like horrific murders. I'm not going to give any more away from the plot, but I did like the fact that you found out who the killer was immediately, but it didn't really spoil the film. And it's got some good sort of chase scenes, some good deaths and that. There's a nurse in here who played a character in the American Office recently, and I knew her from somewhere, and she's very young in this. But yes, it's a good film. It's a much better film than when I went into it. I didn't know what I was expecting. It wasn't a film that I thought it was. I must have got it mixed up with something else. But it's pretty decent, and like I say, the killer straight away, but that doesn't detract for anything away from that film, which is a bit strange for these ones. You always seem to find the killer out that you personally least expect right at the end of the film. Now, number 10 is, now, like I say, all these films are good, but these are getting into films that I enjoyed them okay, but these ones I was enjoying a lot more. Now, number 10 is Graduation Day. Now, Graduation Day is obviously a slasher. At this point, 1981, spine number 1, and I think this is out of print according to Keith from Euphoria Pictures. And it's one of them ones where it's got a decent scan in it, and it's quite, well, it's not unique, but the killer or the scene, they say the running time is 70 minutes. The film would probably only be about 30 minutes long if it didn't have massive slow motion scenes in it. The whole opening scene at the credits where somebody unfortunately dies when they're doing a track race, that's not going to give you any spoilers to it. That's the premise of the film. And then the killer is killing the team that was the team with this girl who died. All the team is getting killed, getting hit off, bumped off, should I say. And but the way she dies, she's got to do 30 seconds to, the coach is saying 30 seconds, come on, you can do it, you can run to this thing. She runs to it, she has a heart attack and dies. But that whole 30 seconds in slow motion when they're saying come on, and it's, you know, it must take about 5 minutes to do. It's the longest scene in history, and it's about 2 or 3 scenes in here. There's another one where there's a band playing, and the band are called, I had a really funny name, a really good 80s name. There's no way I can say it on this one. But they play a song in it because they go to a graduation dance, and this song comes on. It's like a sort of hard rock, not hard rock, like soft rock, heavy metal thing. And this band aren't the best of bands, and this song seems to last for about 10 minutes. And I'm sure they play the song about 4 times because this song could not be that long in reality. But yeah, so that being said, I did enjoy the film, and it's a really good watch. But them huge slow motion scenes are just unreal. Well, strange actually, not unnecessary, but just strange. Now, coming at number 9 is the only Hammer film that I picked, and it is Curse of Frankenstein. This was the first Hammer Frankenstein film from 1957, starring, of course, Peter Cushing as Baron Victor Frankenstein. Now, the thing about this is that in all of the Hammer horror Frankenstein movies, Frankenstein, the character, the doctor, is a real piece of work. He's horrible, and he's got some devious, he just wants his only one thing. He doesn't care who he kills or disrupts or anything, just to get this thing to build this human being. And he's so unscrupulous, and he has got no morals whatsoever. And this carries through from the whole of the Frankenstein ones. But I was really shocked, well, not shocked, but when I saw it, you know, after many years of not seeing it, I did think to myself, I didn't remember that Frankenstein was this bad in the films, and he's better for it. The character is much better, kind of, than the original Dr. Frankenstein from the 1930s. I do think that this film benefits from that, and it's good to see that I wouldn't say it's a scary film, but I did find that it was a very enjoyable film for that reason, for the fact that Frankenstein is a real, you know, so-and-so, but also the picture quality in here, I've got to admit, it could be better. It's quite scratch-free, it's quite soft, and also it's quite, I'm going to say, it looks a bit pastel in colours. It's not vibrant as most Hammer horror is renowned for being rich and vibrant on the colour schemes. This one seems a bit washed out. Now, personally, I think they could have done better on it, but apparently that's the best they could get. I do think that somebody could come along and colour code this better. But saying that, though, it's still a good presentation. But don't look at the one that you have the actual square one or the letterbox one. Don't have the letterbox one. It gets cropped, the picture, and it blows the picture up. The picture does look horrendous on that one. And for a Blu-ray, that's the last thing you want to say. Okay, so yes, at number 8, I have Nightmares and the Damaged Brain. I've always liked this film, even though it was always classed as one of the not so great nasties, and also one of the sicker type of nasties. it's seen from the point of view of the killer in this movie. You know the killer straight away, and it's about the fact that he's been deemed to be fit to go back into society, where I don't know who deemed him to do that, but I think there's a doctor chasing him to say he shouldn't be let out, and I think even he thinks he shouldn't be let out. Now, this is slightly longer than the Code Red one. The colour, the picture on it is much better than the Code Red one, but the sound quality is a little bit low. But this film has a lot of screaming in, especially from the main character, who always wakes up screaming after a murder, or was it not a murder? And so when you've got it up to a normal level, it's great, and then he'll start screaming and it's like it shatters your ears. So just beware that the sound quality, you're up and down a little bit in the sound, but that doesn't take anything away from the film for me. And this is the best it's ever looked. It is pretty gross in places. It's not the nicest of films, and I like it. It's a real sleazy film as well, and I think that benefits this one. But it's got a reputation. But I do think personally it's a really good film. Action. I had a really good time. I always enjoy this film when I watch it, and I watch it quite often, if I'm honest, more often than you would think for Nightmares and Damaged Brain. That the same goes for number 7. That was Bloodsucking Freaks. Now this one here, if you can imagine like a Herschel Gordon Lewis film, where you've got like the likes of The Wizard of Gore, and he's got a show where he sort of tortures people and kills them on stage, and then people are aghast at his special effects, and nobody seems to realise that he's actually doing it in reality, even though the special effects of the actual murders look terrible. This is exactly the same. I think they've just ramped it up a little bit. It's gross out in certain places. There's a lot of how can I put it? If you read between the characters of the fella Sardu, who's the person who presents this show and tells these people to what we're going to do to them, and they get these women on and they torture them, and there's a little midget in it called Ralphus, and he tells Ralphus to do something, and they've got a very strange relationship, those two, and Ralphus goes off and just saws people's hands off and pulls people's teeth out and drills holes, and there's people who drills hole in people's brains and suck the brains out with a straw. It's gross out, but I do like this film. It's not for everybody. It's just screaming all the way through, but for some reason it's ultra low budget, but I've always had a good time with it. Same as Nightmare and Damaged Brain. You couldn't say these are two real classics, but for some reason I just get a lot out of them. And people, if somebody said to you, what were you watching last night? And I says, I was watching Bloodsucking Freaks, and it's got a great bit where somebody gets the brain sucked out with a straw after getting a head drilled. They would think there was something the matter with us, and I can assure you there's not much. Okay, so just check my list there. I've done that much talking. I've lost my count, and it's so coming in at number 6 is it's a new entry, and it's a film that I've been talking about. I talked about quite a lot with Davey and we did talk about the fact is that it's a film that I would have put on the bottom of my list when I originally saw it. I thought, well, I've got to see it. I haven't seen it for years, and I mean years. I haven't seen the Arrow version, which I've got here. I haven't watched anything about it, and I can't really remember about it. All I remember was that I didn't really like it the first time, but I saw it in a really bad copy. So for me, that might have, but I couldn't see what was going on in the original copy I saw. But the film is The Driller Killer. Now this is from 1979, and it tells a story of somebody's descent into madness, and then he decides to kill people with a drill as a way of getting, well, like, I don't know, like that's how he becomes a serial killer, is because he sort of flips, and then he goes out with his drill to kill people. Now that's the short story of this, but to me, I really, really enjoyed this. I enjoyed this a lot more than I thought I was going to do. I watched the full extended version as well, which I don't think I've ever seen before. It's not as gross as this portrays, but there's quite a few. There's a scene in it where the lead character decides to skin a rabbit and gut it and sort of just cut it all up and hit it, with things. And I had to really put my hand over the screen with that, because it was just a bit too, like, it's not sick, because obviously the poor thing was dead, but it was the way that it was sort of a lot of time spent on the fact of him just digging into it with a knife. Just didn't really like it at all. It was a bit gross for me, which there's not many things gross me out in films, but that was quite a bit of a moment like that. I could have done without it. But anyway, apart from that, I did really like it. I did get it. The other band that's in this punk band, they must be the worst punk band in the world, and I think they only know 3 songs as well. But even that, I did quite like it. And I did find myself actually humming one of the songs from here for a while, which is bizarre. But it's got a really good copy of this, really good for what it is, 16mm. It's got an excellent print. That being said, the fact that it's 16mm. But I had a great time, much more than I thought I would do. So Davey, if you're watching this, if you go and watch this again, you might get a bit more out of it, because I did, which is one of the big surprises for me in this one. Okay, so at number 5, we have Hatchet. Now, I watched it on this one, and this one has got the running time of the cut version, but with gore cut out of it. Now, when I watched this, I saw the gore in it, and all the gore in it seemed to match up with what they said was the full uncut version, even though the running time's that shorter. I don't know why that is. Maybe they've cut some storyline out or something like that, but it wouldn't really. It didn't look like there was anything missing to me. But there must be, because the running time in America is 5 or 6 minutes longer. So I would go and buy the uncut one in America on Blu-ray, but it's quite expensive at the minute. If it ever I would love it to come out in a box set with the other ones. I think I might have seen Hatchet and Hatchet 2, but I haven't got any further than that. But I do like these films, and I would like to see, I think Amateur Filmies was telling us there's a one called Victor Crowley as well, which might be, I don't know if it's Hatchet 4, there's like it's like Hatchet 5, can you see, or it's like a backstory one. But I highly recommend this one. It's really, really gory. It's dead funny as well. It's like a comedy horror, really. But it's brutal. And also the killer in it is Kane Hodder, who's Jason from Friday the 13th. So it's got everything going for it. If you want a really top-notch slasher, probably in all of these films is probably the best slasher I've seen in these films. And it might be nearly the best ever slasher I've ever seen. So there you go. Highly, highly recommended that one. And if you want to get this set here, currently you can get this with the silk cover on. I saw one in there the other day. Poundland, if you can get the shops, that is. Poundland, £1. Wow. And you get Hostel and Hostel 2, which I'll be watching Hostel this month. Number 4, getting up to the top here. Number 4 was a one that was a firm favourite of mine, and I knew it would be in the top 5 anyway, and it is Microwave Massacre. Now this one came out, I think it was coming out about in 1980, but it didn't get released till about 1983. And I just like this film. I just like the comedy about it. It's got this just really ridiculous premise that this bloke is getting, his wife is the world's worst cook, so she's kind of goading him and making fun of him. So he flips, kills her, cuts her up, puts her in the microwave and takes her to work and in his sandwiches. So he's taking to work like a leg, and he's eating that. It looks like a doner kebab, and excuse me. And all his friends like this food that he says his wife's cooked and all that. So it's a really, really funny film, and I personally think it's one of my favourites. I've always liked this film since I've seen it as well. No surprise it's high up on the list. Now number 3 is a film that I've always really liked, but I thought was going to be a bit lower down because I've seen it quite a few times, and I thought, will it still have that factor that I liked about it? And I must admit I did really like it. Again, I haven't lost any of me love for the film, and it is Death Proof, Quentin Tarantino's 5th film. That's easy to do because he puts all them ones on there, doesn't he? Obviously Kurt Russell is the standout from this film, and I know Gilly Rocks the Metal channel, shout out to Gilly. She loves Kurt Russell in this one. I think she likes him anyway, but obviously everybody likes Stuntman Mike in here. What a character he is. I like the whole juxtaposition where he is, you know, this sort of death machine in this car. When he makes his car death proof, goes around just running people over because he knows he can get away with it, because he just says, well, I just crashed the car, I didn't kill them, but everyone knows that he kind of must have killed them, because this movie is quite famous for the fact that there is because they crashed the cars in real life, and it's a 200-mile-an-hour head-on crash. So to do that, even, well, obviously they wouldn't do it CGI, well, they could do, I suppose. In real life, to do that, obviously in safety harnesses, whatever, was a real. And when you see the 200-mile-an-hour head-on crash, the gore that added to that is just unreal. But I love this film. It does remain one of my favourites. I did think at this point when I first saw it, I thought this might drop right down. I might watch it again and just think, man, it's not that good. But I did like it again. Now, number 2 is the biggest surprise for me in this whole 13 movies that I did for Halloween 2020. And it was one of the ones where I looked at it, although I have watched it and I did enjoy it. I watched it a while ago, and I thought maybe it's had its time with me. Maybe I'm ready to sort of think that it's not that great. I might watch it and think, what did I ever see in that film? But when I watched it, I was absolutely, much more than I ever was, mesmerised by this film. It's absolutely brutal, gory. There's no redeeming features in the way that these characters are just absolute maggots and slime balls who will do anything to any person just because they want to. And that film is The Devil's Rejects by Rob Zombie. Now, for me, this film is much better than I thought it was going to be. Like I say, it's not for everybody. There's a lot of like sort of torture in it. There's a lot of nastiness about it. It doesn't pull any punches. It doesn't cut away from anything, and you're in for a real, heavy ride when you come in it. But that being said, it's a very enjoyable film, and it's set in the 70s, but it does feel like it could actually be from the 70s, although you could never get this type of content in a 70s film, not even a banned horror film. This begs the question, if this came out in the 70s, it would be immediately banned and probably the top of everybody's list for one of the worst films ever for gore. But I did really enjoy it, and now I want to see the 3 from Hell, which I looked at and thought maybe I'm not that into it anymore. I haven't seen the House of a Thousand Corpses, actually, believe it or not. But this one here, I thought was absolutely brilliant, and it was one of the ones where I thought I would actually watch it and think maybe it's time to let it go. But here it is, number 2. So that just shows you what you can achieve on these watches. You can get yourself a film that you can kind of, to me, I would have never maybe looked at this voluntary again, but to be honest, I would watch this again this year, not this year, next year, no problem, and I can't wait to see the next one. There you go. And number 1, what's number 1 then? Coming in at number 1 is probably the film that I thought, even when I'd done this, I thought this would be number 1, and it was a first time 4K watch, and it is The Evil Dead. Now, I don't have to tell you how good a film this is. The 4K version is actually really good. It's the right scope. It's square. It's 1:33. It's not the cropped widescreen one, which is horrendous, and it looks really nice for a 16mm print on 4K. It's got no extra features on here. So if you ever saw on eBay, just pick it up cheap. I think I only picked it up for about £11, so it's not going to break the bank. It's a good watch, but funny enough, I watched the Blu-ray in comparison, and the Blu-ray was very close to this film. There's only thing I would say that benefited from the 4K was extra detail, especially in faces and clothes, and also colours. The colours were just a little bit better, but it's really surprising how much the Blu-ray, how good it was on my 4 scaled on my 4K player. So that's an interesting one to think when these things, if this thing was like massively streets ahead of the Blu-ray, when I looked at the Blu-ray, it wasn't far behind. But anyway, I don't really need to say too much about this film because it is a classic, and everybody, if you haven't seen it, you must see this film. Although I don't imagine anybody seeing this video would say, Evil Dead, never heard of that one. So thanks for watching this video. I'm doing the same again on November. I'll leave that link down to what films I picked out of the book in November, and that one will be at the end of November. This one's a little bit later. Been quite busy actually. I'm videoing me shelves. They are slowly getting built up, and work permitting. and when I've got that cut together, I'll release that, and it'll give you an idea, a good idea on how to even transfer that to this size of project, and make the one downstairs, you can see, is like a sort of like a little grandson of this one, a little baby one. Anyway, so there you go. So thanks once again for watching. If you do like this video, please like and subscribe, and I'll be putting more stuff out like this all the time. And I thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Take care.